When Emily bought the century-old farmhouse, she told herself the groans and pops in the walls were just the building settling. She loved the quiet, the way the night air smelled of pine and rain. Every evening, she cracked her bedroom window open, letting the breeze wash over her as she fell asleep. On the fourth night, she woke to a faint scratching against the glass. It was slow, deliberate, almost like fingernails dragging along it. She sat up, straining to listen, but when she peeked through the curtain, nothing. Just the trees swaying in the darkness. The next night, it happened again. Scritch, scritch. This time she grabbed her phone, thumb hovering over the record button. But the moment she started filming, the sound stopped. The room fell silent except for the pounding of her own heartbeat. Night 5 brought something new. The scratching came first, soft and steady. Then, a whisper. A man's voice, low and hoarse. "Let me in, I'm cold." Emily's skin prickled. Her bedroom was on the second floor. Nobody should be able to stand outside that window. She slowly turned her head toward it, parting the curtains just an inch. The glass reflected her room back at her. But there was something wrong. In the reflection, a man stood behind her bed, his face pale and eyes sunken. She spun around, nothing. Her hands shook as she slammed the window shut and locked it. The whisper stopped. The next night, she decided to sleep with the window closed, the lock double-checked. But sometime after midnight, a cold gust swept through the room. She bolted upright. The window was wide open. Her breath caught when she saw them. Wet, muddy footprints starting at the sill and leading right to her bed. At the last footprint, the dirt smudged as if something had been kneeling there, watching her sleep. Emily left before sunrise. She didn't bother to pack much. The farmhouse sits quietly now, waiting. The new tenant sleeps with the window open. And just last week, he mentioned to a friend that sometimes in the middle of the night, he hears someone whisper, "Let me in." It was just after midnight when DJ Marcus locked the station door behind him. He was the only one on the overnight shift hosting Midnight Echoes, a late-night call-in show for insomniacs and lonely truckers. The first hour was quiet. A few song requests, a couple of regulars calling in with strange rambling stories. Then at 1:17 a.m., the phone line lit up. A woman's voice came through, low and trembling. "You need to leave the building. Now." Marcus chuckled nervously, assuming it was a prank. "Why's that?" "Because he's in the booth with you." Marcus glanced around. He was alone. Glass walls, empty control room, just the hum of equipment. "All right, funny, who is this?" Silence. Then a soft tap-tap-tap came from the glass behind him. He spun in his chair. Nothing. The line stayed open. The woman whispered again, "Don't turn your back on the door." Marcus's stomach knotted. He was facing the console, and the studio door was right behind him. The tapping started again, this time faster. He hit the on-air button, hoping to catch the sound for his listeners. But when he checked the audio feed, there was no tapping. Instead, there was a low, steady breathing, deep, wet breaths, right next to the microphone. Marcus froze. He wasn't breathing into it. The woman on the phone said one last thing before the line went dead. "If you look, he'll see you." Marcus never finished his shift. The station manager found the booth empty at sunrise, the microphone still live, broadcasting nothing but faint breathing. If you're driving alone at night and see someone in your back seat, don't stop. It's already too late. Jake was driving home after a grueling late shift, the highway nearly deserted. The hum of the tires was hypnotic and his eyes felt heavy. A thin mist clung to the road, making the streetlights blur into glowing halos. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the radio cut out, just static. He tapped it, frowned, and then noticed headlights in his rearview mirror. A car had appeared out of nowhere, trailing close behind. The driver flashed their high beams once, twice, then again. Jake assumed it was some impatient maniac trying to get him to speed up, so he pressed the gas. But the car stayed glued to his bumper, flashing over and over. After a minute of this, Jake's frustration turned to unease. The other driver seemed frantic. Against his better judgment, he pulled onto the shoulder, rolling to a stop. The car behind him stopped too. The driver's door flew open and a man stumbled out, waving his arms wildly. He didn't approach him, he just shouted into the night, voice cracking, "Don't get out! There's someone in your back seat." Jake's breath caught. Slowly, heart pounding, he glanced into the rearview mirror. At first he thought it was a shadow, something hanging from the coat hook. But as his eyes adjusted, the shape moved. A man was crouched low, knees bent unnaturally, face lit by the faint dashboard glow. His grin stretched too wide, teeth catching the light as he tilted his head toward Jake. Jake's hand trembled toward the door handle, but before he could move, he heard the soft click of the back door unlocking. The last thing he saw in the mirror was the man's pale hand curling over the headrest, and the grin growing impossibly wider. If you ever get a phone call from your own number, don't answer it. Lena had just moved into the aging apartment complex downtown. The walls were thin, the air always smelled faintly of mildew, and the elevators groaned like they were carrying the weight of the whole building. But the rent was cheap, and she figured she could deal with a little creepiness. She worked nights, so when she got home, the halls were usually silent, the building half asleep. One night, she tossed her keys onto the counter, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed on the couch. That's when her phone started ringing. The screen froze her in place. It was her own number calling. Her first thought was that it was some kind of scam, but curiosity gnawed at her. She answered. Static filled her ear like an untuned radio. Then through the static came a woman's voice, faint, panicked, but unmistakably her own voice. Lena, don't open the door. She shot upright. Who is this? No answer, just slow, shaky breathing. Then the line went dead. Before she could process it, there was a knock at her apartment door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, her skin prickled. She walked to the peephole, but the hallway was empty. Another knock came, this one closer, louder. Her phone rang again, at same number. Her number, she answered, hands trembling. The voice and her voice and returned, urgent now. He's in the hallway. If you look, he'll know you can hear him. Her chest tightened. She backed away from the door. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, from the gap under the door, something slid into her apartment. A small folded scrap of paper. She crouched and opened it. In jagged, uneven handwriting, it read, "Nice voice." Her phone rang again. But this time it wasn't showing her number. It was apartment 6B. The problem was, apartment 6B had been empty for years, and now she could hear footsteps coming up behind her, inside her own apartment. If your TV turns on by itself in the middle of the night, don't look at the screen. Chris lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much, just a couch, a bed, and an old flat-screen TV his brother had given him when he upgraded. The thing wasn't even a smart TV, just a clunky relic that only turned on when you pressed the power button. Or so Chris thought. One night, at exactly 3:14 a.m., Chris woke up to a low, hissing sound. It was faint at first, but enough to pull him out of a dream. He lay still for a moment before realizing it was coming from his living room. The TV was on. Static danced across the screen, filling the room with a cold, flickering light. Chris frowned. The remote was still on the coffee table, untouched. He hadn't used the TV all day. Half asleep, he walked toward it, but then the static shifted. The swirling white noise gave way to darker blotches, slowly forming the outline of something humanoid. A man-shaped shadow stood in the middle of the screen, head tilted at a strange, unnatural angle as if examining him. Chris's feet froze in place. The static's hiss warped into a faint, crackling whisper. He leaned in slightly, trying to make out the words, until his blood ran cold. It was his name. Over and over, the shadow whispered, "Chris, Chris." And then, without warning, the figure stepped forward. Not in the static, in the reflection. Chris turned toward the darkened window behind him. In its glassy surface, he saw himself, and standing right behind his reflection was the tall shadow, closer now, its head still tilted. His fight-or-flight instincts kicked in. He lunged for the TV's power button. The screen went black instantly. Relieved, he turned back toward his bedroom, but stopped dead. In the dark, he could still see the faint outline of a figure standing in the corner of the room, just outside the spill of moonlight. It didn't move. Then slowly, Chris felt cold hands slide over his eyes from behind. The static started again,